Hey now, baby, I'm a-moving with your vibration. Hey now, baby, got me losing my concentration.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 769 with a review of Hitman. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we are talking about a film that, as of the time of this recording, is currently playing in a few theaters, but by the time you are listening to this episode, it should now be available for streaming on Netflix, and that is the film Hitman. Stephen and I caught it at TIFF last year, I guess it is now.
Yeah.
And it is finally available for everybody to watch. We are talking about it. Stephen, without getting too far into it, I think this is a film we both had fun with at TIFF. Are you excited to talk about it for real now?
I am, yeah. I mean, in the heat of a festival, you know, I think this was pretty much in the midpoint of TIFF for us. So it was very much, my brain was already soup. And so you never know what is going to hit at a festival and not work in real life, or what might get like elevated in a normal movie theater setting. Yeah. So I was excited to catch this again. And especially because this wound up being, I think, the biggest deal out of TIFF. It was like a $20 million acquisition by Netflix. It was a huge bet that they're making. So I was intrigued to see what happened to this, what I remember as like a little charming movie out of TIFF, and see if it has legs.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun with it at TIFF. I think, I mean, if you think about it though, like TIFF audience is probably about equivalent to audience at a tiny theater where our combined age is still less than the average age of the rest of the people who are in the theater. So, yes. I mean,
so what Chris is alluding to is the fact that the rollout that Netflix allowed for this is very, very, very strange. They clearly are not doing a wide rollout. In our case, it is only going to one theater, which is the landmark Opera Plaza, which is a tiny theater in downtown San Francisco that was playing a few blocks away from where Skrillex, I believe, was doing an impromptu DJ set this weekend. And
that's so why there were so many open seats.
Yeah, all the young people were at Skrillex, and then Chris and I, we were not at the same screening, but presumably both of us were surrounded by octogenarians the whole time.
It was a bunch of older folks. At one point, there were some people in the row behind me who said something that was about to be revealed, and the people directly in front of them, as it was happening, went, "Oh my God," and repeated the reveal that the guys loudly said in the seat behind them. So, I mean, at least they were dialed in and focusing and couldn't hear the people around them.
The couple next to me had a lot of, "What did he say?" And then the other person saying what he said.
He said he's a hitman.
Charming. It's very interesting how, because you assume most people just like Google movie times and go to whatever has the movie playing. But the Opera Plaza Theater is a very self-selecting group where it seems like 95% of attendees are just the older people who, like, I believe there are particularly apartment complexes near the Opera and Opera Plaza that for whatever reason are mostly elderly people that live there. But it seems like this theater is mostly people who just wander in and go like, "Oh, remember Ricky Linky? Remember that young fella?"
Yeah. I mean, it does remind me of a bygone time when, you know, you could just show up to the theater and see what's playing and decide to watch something. Even myself, one who would plan, I would still like be out to dinner with my dad, and we'd pick a place near the theater and then just walk over and see what the next showing is of like a couple different things that might be worth seeing. So
it was a good feeling. That's how I wound up seeing the Bewitched movie for my very first date.
Very nice.
It was a solid choice.
And how did that date go?
The movie was trash, but we dated for 3 years. So, you know, you might say I cast a spell.
I might, Stephen. All right. Well, what do you say we get into this film, Stephen?
Let's do it.
Let's take a listen to the trailer for Hitman and then come back and give everyone a review.
No, I don't buy it.
What?
You're not a hitman. You can't be. I tried looking you up, and nothing. It's like you don't even exist.
I guess I'm just your fantasy.
So what's the biggest difference between the real you and your occupation?
By the way, my name is Gary Johnson, and I'm a fake hitman. I realize not everyone fantasized about the same hitman. Every sting operation was a performance.
This is serious. I am in service business.
And each arrest was like a standing ovation.
Okay, Daniel Day.
I had it down to a science.
Sounds lovely.
Until things got, well,
Ron.
complicated.
Madison.
We're expecting heavy turbulence, so prepare to brace for impact.
Do I scare you?
No.
Remember the lady came in trying to have her husband killed that we let go?
No, that he let go.
Yeah, her husband was just found dead.
I'm sorry, what happened?
From my perspective, you're getting a little sloppy. You think you're Gary? Who's the hitman?
My name is Gary Johnson, and my simple question for you is, who is your hitman?
We'll see.
Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
All right, so that was the trailer for Hitman. It is basically loosely based on an actual guy who was an undercover or working undercover with the police, and he would pose as a hitman and try to arrest people who were trying to have other people killed. So, Stephen Miller, what did you think of Hitman?
Yeah, so when we saw this at TIFF, I liked it quite a bit, but I remember being less hot on it than you were, and I feel like less hot than critical consensus was. My feeling at Toronto was, this is a fun movie, but it feels very slight. It feels very light. It's just having fun, and I had trouble getting excited about it, right? Like I did a top 5 write-up out of Toronto, and Hitman was never really in the running on the top 5, even though if I were really to rank what is just the most effortlessly joyful experiences of the fest, it probably had a shot, but it just felt, there's just something about it that didn't totally click for me. So I was excited to watch it again without all of the pressure and exhaustion of the festival to see how I felt. And I liked it a lot. I think it bumped up a bit for me watching it again, but I fundamentally feel the same way, which is that this is a charming, breezy movie that feels pretty damn weightless in a fun way, but it feels weightless in a way where the hype of biggest acquisition out of Toronto, is this the next big movie? Is this going to be one of the greatest movies of the year? Is Glen Powell announcing himself as the next big star? I just don't think the movie Richard Linklater made can sustain that weight, and I don't think it wants to at all. It feels mismatched to me, because there's a lot of joy in watching this as just a kind of breezy, lackadaisical movie that is, it has something to say, and we can decide if we do a little spoiler section or not. I'm not sure how we want to touch on what happens in the movie, but this is clearly a movie about, can you change who you are? How much can you dress for the job you want, or fake it till you make it, right? How much is confidence and charisma just a matter of unlocking something within you versus you just are fundamentally a certain way and incapable of changing, right? That is as far as the film wants to go in any kind of deep way. Otherwise, this is a movie that flies by on its premise and its 2 very, very charismatic, high chemistry leads. And I was shocked at how much this movie flew by this time around. I felt like it goes from announcing the core premise of Gary, the undercover agent / Ron, the hitman that he plays, to almost being in the home stretch of the movie. Like I couldn't believe how quickly it felt like this movie went by this time around.
Yeah.
And the thing that sets this film apart, that makes it both very fun and also for me gives it a ceiling, is no one for a minute seems to be taking their circumstance seriously in any way. Like there's a bravura moment toward the end of this movie, probably the best scene in the film, where Ron and Maddie, they're performing together. They are audibly doing one thing while visually doing another, and it is it is very fun, right? Like I had a big dumb grin watching it again. I'd forgotten that it was going to happen this time around. And as fun as it is, the body language of both characters, the way they're having fun, the way they're like smirking and having a spark of joy, it makes sense in a rom-com of two people falling in love. It makes no sense in the context of the stakes that they are dealing with in that moment, because that is this whole movie, is people playing pretend and making a fun, sexy thing where nothing matters too much. and that isn't a criticism. Like that is Richard Linklater's vibe. Like that is the exact vibe of the dude who walked out for the Q&A and seemed like, let's talk. What do you want to know? Yeah, I wanted to make a sexy 90s movie. I think I made a sexy 90s movie.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Cool. This movie is all chill, and that makes it super fun and nice in just a kind of, I don't know, it moves at a speed that will always, for me, be a thing that is ideal to watch on like a Sunday afternoon for fun while you're not thinking too hard and not wanting too much more out of it. And I think in that context, this is a charming throwback, sexy, seductive movie. I think Glen Powell is great. Adria Arjona, I don't think I'd ever seen her in anything before. I'm possibly pronouncing her name wrong, but she plays the primary love interest. I think she is incredibly dynamic and watchable in this movie. They carry this thing in a way that makes it totally fun, a crowd pleaser. I just don't feel like this is a roaring crowd pleaser. I feel like it's a nice movie that is nice. And I don't know. I don't know how to square that with the level of like 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, 4.5 out of 5, 5 out of 5 type of. I just worry that this movie is getting hyped to a degree that it can't withstand. And it's hard for me to separate how I feel about it from the kind of breathless enthusiasm that comes with it. So, Chris, raise me up a little bit. Tell me why this movie is more than just a nice, fun time and is legitimately fantastic.
Well, I mean, I really, this was one of my favorite films at a TIFF. Now, again, when I make my list, it's not about what I think is the most elevated thing. It's just the things that like I genuinely just really loved. And I had it as my number 4 film out of the festival. So like I genuinely loved it. And one of the benefits of actually getting to see this at a festival is that hype doesn't technically exist, right? You just know the filmmaker, the actors involved in it, and you're like, okay, let's just see what this is about. Interesting premise. We'll see how this goes. And then you have the chance to be surprised and really enjoy it. I haven't been paying attention to the kind of hype around its release, and that's mostly because I think that first teaser trailer was horrendous. I thought it did an active disservice. And then, the trailer that we did play, the audio is not quite as spoilery as the visuals that go along with the audio that you would see if you just saw this theater or this trailer in a theater. But I wish they would have had a trailer that's halfway down the middle that set up the premise for the film and then kind of kept everything else as a little bit of a tease. I think this film is incredibly fun. And I think that, there are some times when I want a sexy romantic comedy, right? Like it is a fun thing. Like, we before last year we had the summer of Barbenheimer. I wish that this year was the summer of The Fall Man.
They would go so well together. I kept thinking about that.
They do. And to be fair, this is a step down from Fall Guy. I think Fall Guy is the Fall Guy is a masterpiece.
I was genuinely going to ask you specifically how this ranks compared to Fall Guy for you.
I think if I hadn't recently seen the Fall Guy in theaters and then when it came out on home video watched it again, I think that I might have been even higher on this film. But this film is a slow build. It starts off as like a cheesy. The performances are a little overdone. It's sort of cheesy. It feels more like a television sitcom at first.
Yeah.
But as the complexity of the story starts to build and Glen Powell's commitment to the characters that he's playing starts to get heightened and heightened and heightened, this film starts to really come into its own and sort of starts to build and becomes a thing that I think is genuinely pretty great. I like it. It's like, obviously, as you said, you know, the two leads in this film have so much fucking chemistry and are just so good together that it really kind of carries you through the film and just builds and builds and builds and propels you towards where this film is eventually going. You know, you kind of asked the question or posed it as a statement about thinking that this isn't the type of thing that, like, you know, it quote unquote launches Glen Powell. Like, obviously he's been around for a while and he's in a bunch of other things that kind of give him the star recognition more than Hitman is ever going to. But I think it does show off this level of willing to be serious, but also self-deprecating and kind of just funny, but shows the charisma that he has naturally, but also lets him kind of make fun of himself. It feels a little bit like...
This is his Chris Hemsworth in the Ghostbusters reboot, basically. This is his, like, I'm a hunk, but I'm totally willing to be silly, you know?
Yeah. What's Cyclops' name? The actor plays Cyclops. And
jury duty guy.
Jury duty guy. Why is his name escaping me?
Everyone...
Yeah, everyone's
is
like
shouting this.
Yeah. Anyways, we all know who I'm talking about. That guy has a similar thing where he can be like, he is a
Marsden.
Yeah, James Marsden. Yeah. So James Marsden is a very handsome, charismatic actor, but he can also play silly and dumb and kind of like make fun of himself and do the Sonic movie and stuff like that, right? Like, he can play that cheesy role. And I think in this film, Glen Powell like goes places where he shows his range in a film that is theoretically not worthy of what he's capable of, but he elevates it to a level that is, and he also is a co-screenwriter or whatever on this film. So it's like, this isn't him just like going to something that he's just trying to like bring a paycheck. Like, he obviously cared about this story and thought it was something that he would have fun with, and he does. And I think that he brings me along for the ride. I'm sad that I had to watch this in a theater full of older people who, like, by the end were actually like laughing and coming along from it and being shocked by moments that were happening and like really kind of having fun. But and I'm also kind of sad that people are going to watch this at home on Netflix and you know, they might watch it alone or they might watch it with one other person, and like half the laughing in the room will be one person laughing genuinely and the other person laughing at the fact that they thought it was actually funny when they didn't think it was funny. You know, like, I think that people are going to have a diminished experience watching this film when it really is meant to be seen with a crowd who's all vibing with it and enjoying the weird silliness of what it's doing. And you know, I love this film for what it does, but I also love this film for like what's going on. Like, even silly things where it tries to stay logically consistent. Like, in the trailer, there's a moment where the love interest is in like a sexy flight attendant outfit, right?
Right.
And it's supposed to be just like sexy role play time, right? But in the research of that person before the first meeting, she actually is a flight attendant. That's one of the jobs she has had. So it's like, there's little things where like it feels like these characters are fully fleshed out, even though it's just things that are meant as a joke or like a little sexy time, but they're all logically consistent, and these characters have like through lines that keep them understanding what they are. You know, you see background to what Gary past relationships might have been, and like even moments where he's just sitting down with his ex-wife talking, you see their entire relationship play out and stuff in these little moments. And I don't know, I just think that this film it's incredibly competent, which
very, very, very much. Yeah.
Which can be a negative for a film that you were expecting more out of. But I think absent the hype, this film allows itself to surprise you in like a genuinely fun kind of way. And I think that more people should give it a chance, and hopefully just be open to enjoying it, and don't go into it with like a lot of expectations. Just kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm going to check out this film, and then see how fun it is.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you're saying. Like, it's probably unfair that I am judging this as a movie that people were raving about as one of the best things to come out, this year. Because this is a movie, if you actually go by the Rotten Tomatoes metric of, do I recommend it? Do I like it more than not? 100%. I recommend, like, I feel like almost anyone in my life, I could tell them to go watch Hitman and they'd probably have a nice time, which is like, hopefully means even absent the laughter in a theater, it will do well on streaming, because it seems like if you see it, you're going to like it. There's just, I don't know. I was trying to pinpoint it this time when I was watching the movie, the pace of how it both flies by, but also feels like it's just like sauntering in a way where it like doesn't really care that much if you're gripped or not. And it comes in Glen Powell's performance too, where he is really funny when he commits to all these different characters. In at least one of the trailers, I would say, reveals too much in terms of the different places that he goes. But the difference between him and like a Gosling, talking about Fall Guy or The Nice Guys or any, Barbie, any of these times where Ryan Gosling has been able to poke fun at himself, is Ryan Gosling never mugs at the camera. He just commits to the character. And Glen Powell, he always has a swagger in this movie where, like, when things are ridiculous or he's being silly, it feels like within a minute there's going to be a look at the camera or a smile or something that indicates that, like, he knows that was ridiculous. Like, I just keep going back to one of the best scenes in the movie toward the end, which, again, I'm not going to spoil, but the two characters are both kind of acting in some way. And the look of joy on his face when he's, like, telling them to escalate it and stuff, it is... No matter what his character actually is in that moment, what he is fucking cool as hell Glen Powell who's having fun in a movie. and I am curious what it would look like for him to commit to a role where he is not cool. Because in this movie, whatever we are supposed to believe about Gary, the shell of a human being that we barely spend time with before Ron enters the picture.
Yeah.
Glen Powell is a fucking suave, cool dude.
Well, okay, so let me ask you a question, and this is not meant as a negative on Glen Powell, but I'm just trying to I'm trying to level set for you, and I'm realizing that it's going to sound like it's an insult to Glen Powell, but close your eyes and think of Glen Powell's Hangman character from Top Gun Maverick.
Mm-hmm. I see
Just
him.
Think of his face anytime he delivers any line. Is he not still performing in that same way in those lines?
He is 100%. Yeah. I mean, it is innate to his face he is smirking.
now picture the trailer for Twisters, and every time he delivers any line of dialogue, it's there too, same. Right?
And that's the thing, is because you mentioned him showing his range in this movie, and I see that in the sense that he's poking fun at himself, but I don't really see a range that doesn't break within 60 seconds. And that's, I guess, what I'm curious about, is Glen Powell as an actor who truly commits. And again, that is no dock on Hitman, which I think is a charming, infectious movie that I'm going to give a positive review to in the end. Yeah. But it's just, this movie feels like a lark to me. It feels like Richard Linklater and Glen Powell were like, hey man, let's make something fun, in between doing, the next Paul Mescal Boyhood, but it's going to be filmed over 15 years type of thing, let's just make a fun movie together. And that's great. They made a fun movie, but it just doesn't feel like it hits the heights for him as an actor or for Linklater as a director that, I don't know. I need to separate it from the hype, because it's not fair to judge it by something that the movie is not trying to do. I just noticed it a little bit more this time around, even though I also noticed how breezy and fun the pacing of this movie was. The whole time I kept thinking, like, man, I'm watching a movie, but I kind of feel like I'm just like hanging out with a guy that I'm supposed to want to hang out with, you know? And it's fun to hang out with him, but it's a hangout.
Yeah. No, and I feel that. And like I said, the beginning, it took me like when it started, I was like, uh-oh, did I misremember?
Well, because it has basically like voiceover narration, and you're probably wondering how I got here type vibes, you know?
Yeah. It definitely starts out a little too cheese and a little rough, but I think that it earns itself the tone that it's striving for really quickly. And for me, it's just exactly what you need. Just in the summer when you're like, all right, I just need some chill vibes to hang out and kind of enjoy a film like this. So
yeah, no, I agree. And look, I'm not going to say harsh, but like I've been focusing mainly on what this movie isn't. But I had a lot of fun watching it again. There's a lot of laughs. You know, there are all these different hitman alter egos of Gary's that I think are very entertaining to see. There's essentially a montage moment where we get to see a bunch of them back to back to back. I do really love this core idea. We talked about it at TIFF in our mini review of a hitman is not a real thing, but a hitman is a fantasy on which people project whatever they wish would exist, you know, that would magically remove them from a situation. And so I like the idea of a movie about a man who is just great at fulfilling people's fantasies. And what happens what if the love story is you become someone else's fantasy and who you are deep down doesn't even exist anymore, you know? And it's kind of like the perfect romance while also being like hollow, and there's like shifting ethics and stuff that are hollow too, and like it is doing something really fun and interesting. And I like the idea of this whole movie is about people performing, you know. It's fun. And we talked about sexy times, which is a phrase I never want to hear you say again, but we talked about it. And this is like a slinky, seductive movie. Like, even though it moves pretty fast, so it isn't like we have that much time for the romantic leads to build their rapport and fall in love. Like, we have some, but it's kind of like instantaneous, you know, a switch is flipped. You totally buy it. Like, you buy the heat between these characters immediately, and they're doing this thing that Richard Linklater loves. You know, I think of like Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy having their imaginary phone conversation in Before Sunrise, you know, of they're playing with each other. You know, they're playing characters, they're goofing off, they're toying with each other, they're not sharing all of the information, and it totally works. Like every piece of this movie works and is really fun and really silly, and it just doesn't carry any mental weight for me at all. but that's still fine. It's still fine. I still feel fondness for this movie. I don't want to overpraise it, because I think overpraise does not do this movie any service, basically.
Yeah. All right. I mean, you have to at least underpraise it, Stephen.
Yeah.
You can't just say bad things about it.
I do really love the idea that like the going rate for most of these characters of the hitman is like $2,000 or something. Like it is, it really underlines how ridiculous the fantasy of a hitman is. But like, so, you know, I think he even talks about it in the movie, that someone is willing to risk like the death penalty for like, you know, the cost of like half a month's rent or something. But
he also, like, that's the thing, is he researches every person and he puts up a price that is commensurate with like who that person is and what they can afford.
Right. Yeah, we call that a sliding scale in yeah.
But yeah, it's you know, to some of those people that was a lot of money.
I will say I had a little bit of an inner Schnese watching it this time around. The plot isn't the point of this movie. It isn't. And I think it's cleverly constructed. Like, I think the way the characters interact and things escalate is really smart. But the plot is definitely not airtight. You know, like, for as smart as Gary is, I would say he's very impulsive and very dumb in how he handles threats and things that happen in the movie. There are lots of moments where it's like there would be an easy solve for this and you're not taking it. it didn't detract from it in any way, but I didn't know if you had your own inner Schnese running this time around, if you were just enjoying the ride and not thinking about what you would do if you were in this quagmire.
I mean, let's be honest, I would never be in this quagmire.
Right, for sure.
But
you'd be teaching philosophy.
Yeah. I wouldn't also go in and try to talk to somebody who's trying to kill their significant other.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was just, this film has no friction to just get in and enjoy the ride. Like, there are other films where I'm like, oh man, this is kind of a stretch, or like, it really thinks it's funny and I'm not vibing with it. I think it goes down so easy that it's kind of like, you ever get like, you at a restaurant or whatever, you get one of those cocktails, you're like, this is good. And then you take another sip, you're like, oh, this is really good. You take your third sip and you realize you just had the whole cocktail. Like,
oh yeah.
That's how this film is. This film is not something that you sit and sip in a long time. It's something that just goes down so smooth that you don't taste the alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Makes sense.
I think that analogy works. I don't know.
No, I get it. But the difference is, I would order a second and a third. I would keep going. I would keep savoring.
Yeah, well, I don't have that option here, Steven. I mean, technically, my third can just be this weekend when it drops on Netflix. I can watch it one more time.
Yeah, I am excited. I am probably going to watch it with Joanne on Netflix still. I have a nitpick just to close out my thoughts on this movie. I probably blame the trailer for this, because there's a line that I remember enjoying when it recurred at TIFF about how's the pie? All pie's good pie.
Oh, yeah.
That was put in the trailer, so I've heard it many times since then. By the time it hit in this movie, the line did nothing for me. And when it came back multiple times, I was like, man, you're forcing this. It's not that good a line.
I mean, it's not supposed to be a good line. It's just the way that the person you're trying to talk to is a killer, right? Like, it's like walking up to a person on the street and saying, like, what time does the train run? And then you say some phrase back to them that lets them know that you're the person. Like, or when you go to a speakeasy, going back to the cocktail thing.
Oh, so are you saying, I don't want to get into spoilers, but are you saying the last time this comes up, it's almost like the One I Love reveal about bacon, where this is like telling me which version of the person I'm watching?
No. This film is not that deep.
Because all I saw is that's like an attempt at a catchphrase.
Yeah. Well, no. So like Steven.
Do we think Gary likes pie?
Steven, it is a way. It is a shake hands. It is a secret thing that you walk up and you say a phrase, and if they say the answer back to you, you guys know that you're in the right conversation and you're allowed to proceed.
Oh, you think they agreed to that ahead of time?
That is what the original use for that phrase is you walk into this place, you'll see a guy eating a pie. You say, are you liking the pie? And they'll say, all pie is good pie. The last time you hear the phrase, it is a callback specifically in the context of how they met.
I missed the handshake agreement of that. I always just saw it as a line that he says that charms people.
No, it's specifically, it's like, like there's the one weirdo guy who comes in and he's like, are you enjoying your pie? And the guy's like, all pie is good pie. And then he goes, yeah. It's because he realizes
I remember all
on.
of that. I just somehow both times my brain blanked. If it was told to me that was like a code, I blanked that, and I thought that was just like all pies, good pies, like the swagger that's like, hell yeah.
Steven, you obviously can't walk up to somebody and be like, hey, are you the guy who kills people for money? And they go, yes, I am, sir. It's like a way that you get away, because if the cops...
I love that you leap from that to, of course, it's how's the pie, all pies, good pie. I believe you. I believe I'm dumb. I'm completely willing to say that I'm dumb. I just, if that was context setting, I just somehow missed it both times I watched the movie.
It's a reference to like general espionage sort of stuff in other films, right? It's like there's always like a secret phrase that you say that requires a secret response that know that you're both on the same job, right? Because if you walk up to somebody on the street and they say something weird to you and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're like, oh, sorry, you're not also a spy. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's a common trope of these type of stories.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're better than me. 5 stars.
Steven's like, I remember liking this, but this fucking pie joke is dumb as hell.
The last thing I'll say, and we don't really need a spoiler section, but for as much as I think this movie is mostly breezy and weightless and fun, the main story arc, like before a kind of coda that happens, ends on a note that I would say is actually very dark and haunting, and I like it a lot. So this does have the goods, like it can do it. It's just for the most part, they decided not to make that movie, and I'm kind of curious to see a significantly darker version of the same story.
Yeah. And there's even a really uncomfortable laugh that calls attention to the fact that it is ending on that dark note as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that is probably going to do it for a review of Hitman. Let's get to verdict, Steven. If you're going to even say must see, recommend with the caveat, wait for rental, pass the caveat, or must avoid, what would you give it?
I was wrestling with this because normally, just by how breezy and likable it is, I would still give it a must see, but I'm filled with caveats today, probably unfairly because of the pressure of how much love this is getting. So I'm giving it a recommend with a caveat. Like, I do think this is a movie that is very easy to like, easy to enjoy. It's fun. Love me some Linklater. I think Glen Powell is good in it. I think Adria Arjona is great in her role too. I think the chemistry is awesome. The caveat is just, I think this movie is very, very, very unambitious in what it wants to do. It has a tone of just hanging out and goofing off, and that hangout, goof off tone is fun. But like you said, there are bigger, more spectacle goof off movies like Free Guy or Fall Guy, not Free Guy. But that was also
Free Guy I also liked.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't actually know Hitman and Fall Guy where I land. Like, they're doing different things, and I kind of respect Hitman more in some ways, but as a big, silly spectacle, Fall Guy is super fucking fun. And Hitman is occupying an interesting middle ground where it isn't trying to do a lot, but it also isn't fully embracing the goofiness or the silliness or the charm. And I don't know, I'm still kind of wrestling with where this fits. But I like it. And if you catch it on Netflix, I think you're going to like it too. Just don't go in expecting some kind of masterpiece or anything. And you are not as terminally online as I am about this stuff, so you haven't seen all the like rave reviews of how this is like a powerful, interesting story about personality and chosen identity. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Oh no, I don't agree with any of that.
It does. Can it just be fun? It doesn't have to be important too. Let's not pretend.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I stand. It probably should be a must-see, but just to signify that I don't totally agree with the breathless hype, I'm rounding it down a little bit.
Yeah, and to the people who are praising this film's showing of identity and how one can change themselves, the character who is actively demonstrating the biggest ability to change is the one who directly makes the statements about how people are incapable of changing.
Yep.
So, I mean, do what you will with that information. Mm-hmm. The other point that I do want to make is Steven just proved the point that not all pie is good pie. But yeah, for me, this is going to be a must see. As I said, it was like my 4th favorite film of TIFF last year. I still enjoyed it a lot this time around. Wish I had a bigger audience. This is exactly the kind of film that if I wouldn't have seen it at the festival, wouldn't have caught it in theaters and watched it at home in Netflix, Jamie would have constantly been like walking out trying to figure out what I was laughing to myself about.
Yep.
But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I hope other people check it out and avoid the hype and just get to have the smooth, quick drink that is this film.
Exactly. And what kind of pie are you chasing that drink with? What's your go-to pie?
What is my favorite pie? I don't know. Like, the thing that I would go to in my head doesn't have the word pie in the title. I would say cheesecake, but cheesecake is a cake, not a pie.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. If I had to go pie, I'm either going pecan pie or a key lime, I think.
Okay, key lime. Yeah, I'm partial to like apple or rhubarb, I guess.
Okay. Like it? You like it crust? I respect that.
But yeah, still, if I'm just going dessert in general, cheesecake is where I'm at.
100%.
Yeah,
you're right.
Cheesecake
and like a stout or like an old fashioned or something.
Yeah, and specifically, you have like a really dense cheesecake where the is it still crust on the bottom? It's still crust on the bottom, right? Yeah. Where the crust is made from espresso beans. Oh my god.
See, I agree with that. I was gonna go like a pretzel crust, but I agree with that too. I wanted to have a little bit of a like salty sweet. That's what I'm going for.
Oh man, dude, I'm craving. I'm craving a brewery stout and
man, if only there was like a place you could order cheesecake from, like produced it at scale, like a factory.
Oh, Steven, you're gonna get me in trouble with all the giggling. So I don't want to be off-putting to any listeners.
Sorry, new listeners.
But yeah, anyways, I think that's it. We did it. We reviewed this film. We had fun with it, varying levels of fun, but we did. So we're going to close out the show now. Stephen Miller, people want to find you throughout the week. Where can they do that?
You can find me sitting at the diner eating a pie at Threads at sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
You can find me changing pants with people in a van outside the diner. Or you can find
That's after the pie?
Yeah, that's after the pie. Like, oh, sorry, I'm gonna need something that has more breathing room. People can find me at ChristopherMillerLife.com or ChristopherIRL at a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you are enjoying that. Yeah, that is playing now. We will be back either sometime in about a week or maybe in 3 weeks, depending on if we end up making another film in before I head off for a little vacation. But yeah, hope you hear from us soon. How about that?
Love it.
Bye.
Bye.